Well, it is 1:30, so we can get started. First on our agenda is welcome and introductions. So you are here for the Program Performance and Evaluation Committee of the Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Board. So if that is not the meeting you intended to attend, here's your time to leave the room. Right out, real quick, save yourself. I am Liz Sheehan. I serve on the Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Board in a council member seat, and I am the chair of this committee for the group. So we'll just go around really quickly and introduce ourselves. I'll start here.
I'm Jeff Herron. I am the Homelessness Prevention Manager with LFUCG's Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention.
I'm Lela Still. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health Social Work for UK Healthcare.
I'm Diane Fleet, Associate Director, Greenhouse 17.
I'm Melissa Turk. I'm also Greenhouse 17.
I'm Bruce Davis, member of the HPI Board.
Dylan Show, Regional Director of Community and Housing Services with New Vista.
David Chav, the Hope Center. Now, I apologize in advance. We have a training going on at the classroom behind us at 2, so there'll maybe some people straggling in here. I told them to be quiet, though.
Marty Jones from the Action Council.
Christina Ellison, New Beginnings Bluegrass.
Martha Webb, Continuum of Care Coordinator. Okay. Thank you everyone for attending today. The next item that we have on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from February 15th. So I first want to just ask if anybody has any changes that they would like to suggest to the meeting minutes. Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the meeting minutes. I think that has to come from Diane or Bruce, because y'all are our two members from the board.
I can make that motion. I wasn't at that meeting, so I paused, but I can make that motion.
Okay, thank you. And I need a second.
I will second.
And then all in favor of that approval, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Actually, sorry, I didn't see the double stars on that. I could have taken a motion from anyone that's in Continuum of Care. I apologize for that. But I heard other people vote, so maybe you know. Okay. Today for our April meeting, our program reviews, we have Community Action Council with 2 different programs to present: the Crisis Housing and Support for Youth Transitional Housing Rapid Rehousing under a Continuum of Care program, and Project Independence Rapid Rehousing Continuum of Care program, followed by Greenhouse 17 for the emergency shelter, and then New Vista for the permanent supportive housing. So, following along in our agenda, we'll start with community action. Down here with Marty, we have the Crisis Housing and Support for Youth Transitional Housing Rapid Rehousing program. That's a mouthful, but you go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, so you can just say, we just call it cheesy with the acronym, but we partner with Arbor Youth to provide, is a joint component program, which means that we have some transitional housing units that we can utilize to provide sort of temporary housing for youth between the ages of 18 and 24 who are experiencing homelessness, who are unsheltered. But we also have the rapid, with the goal of moving to permanent housing, but then there's also the rapid rehousing side, which is just in general a rapid rehousing program, and so those two kind of function together. We do, because of the nature of the grant, we do target youth, transition age youth between the age of 18 and 24. They can be accompanied or unaccompanied, and that includes parenting youth. And just like other programs, obviously we strive to help clients obtain housing as quickly as possible, and help them stabilize and maintain their housing. As far as the targets go, as far as the number of persons served, we were actually a little bit over, but our household served was a little bit under. That's right. That may have been a typo on the actual, I'm not sure. No, that's right. And then as far as the breakdown with the demographics, it was about evenly split between males and females. We did have one parenting youth. As far as the race goes, I think this is one that's sort of a little in contrast to generally our other housing programs in which African American or Black is more represented. And I think that may just, I don't have the statistics to confirm, but I like off the top of my head, but I'm guessing that just with the age of the population that we serve, that they may be a little overrepresented just in terms of the population in Lexington. So that number is a little bit higher than others. As far as ethnicity, we had 14 that were non-Hispanic and 2 that were Hispanic. And looking at the outcome measures, the average length of time to move-in date was 59 days. As far as exits to permanent housing, and that would be participants who had left the program and where their destination was, 71% of those exited to a permanent housing destination. We did not have any returns to homelessness. As far as job and income growth, there were more, as far as there weren't any stayers who gained income, but as far as the leavers go, we did have 43% who left with that either gained or increased their income upon exit. We didn't have any that had other income, and I think again it's probably with the population that we serve between 18 and 24, they're just less likely to be receiving some type of disability or other type of non-earned income just based on their age. As far as the APR is we're currently in the 90-day window to have that submitted. We don't have any unresolved monitoring. We are actually being monitored beginning next week, so hopefully that will be a no after this. And as far as the funds and quarterly drawn down, we do those. We did have some funds recaptured. Those were mainly with the transitional housing side of things. And that's one thing that we're looking at adjusting the budget, because now that Arbor Youth has, when we originally applied for the program, there wasn't a shelter in Lexington for this age group. However, that has changed, and so the need for transitional housing has declined some. And so we're looking at decreasing the number of transitional housing units that we have available and increase the number of rapid rehousing units that we would have to be able to serve. And it is, we do follow a housing first model. As far as, with the program, we do look at performance measures on a regular basis. We also are in communication with Arbor Youth staff as far as the services go and addressing any challenges with the program as well as client progress and just overall operations of the program. And then as far as our efforts toward equity and diversity, we do have an officer within the agency, an officer of diversity, equity, and inclusion to help as far as include more culturally informed policies and do some staff trainings and other meetings in the agency. And then we are still in the process of developing a system for better incorporating feedback from clients within the program. So that's pretty much the presentation. If anybody has any questions.
We'll open up for questions for this program.
One thing I was going to ask about was there's an asterisk next to returns to homelessness. I was just wondering if that indicated anything in particular.
No, I think that meant I had the sheet filled out except for that one, and I emailed Marissa, and I just put the asterisk and highlighted it, which is probably
Gotcha.
I have 2 questions, unless someone else is jumping in. Okay. First, you said for the number of households served, you had 6. Your target was 12, and the number of persons served you are actually over, so you have served 16, where your target was 14. Could you talk about the family size? Because I would presume that then the 16 are broken down in those number of households. So what is the typical family size, since you have some potential parenting youth?
Right, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think there could be the households served and the person served. I have to look, because I've noticed that when I was presenting, it seems a little off. Because typically, with this population, we're usually serving either single, unaccompanied youth, or couples as well. But we've had, when we did parented youth. So I think some of that may lie in terms of, like I said, I could be wrong, I have to look at it a little more. That we had some clients that may have been entered into the project but weren't yet housed, and so when I was looking at the numbers, I may have, that number may be a little higher for individuals as far as like those that may have been in the project but weren't yet housed. So I'll have to look at that, I'm not sure exactly, because it does seem off as I was presenting this.
So generally, it's like one or two people?
One or two, yeah, more likely it's unaccompanied youth. Like I said, we do have we had a few couples and one or two parents and youth. For the most part, that should be, it's one. And so I could have, I'm not sure exactly.
And then my other question was about, a couple times when you've presented to us, you've mentioned the DEI officer and then staff trainings. Could you talk just a little bit about what trainings have actually taken place already?
I know, there's been a few trainings just regarding, I don't have specific titles, just as overall agency have done some trainings, just like our all staff meetings regarding diversity and equity. And I don't know where we're at in terms of the policies as far as that goes, but I can find that out.
Thank you.
Maybe have another minute.
Okay. I guess my question is it like cultural competency training? Like, is it working with particularly groups that you might interact with as a part of your program? So you don't have to answer today if you don't have that information. I know it's a little bit outside of the, but I know that has been one of the things that has come up in some of our past report outs. So I just wanted some more information maybe for next time.
Okay, yeah, I can put them on
Do you know, does Arbor Youth conduct like trainings, like kind of what their trainings entail?
there. I don't.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the trainings are like full staff or community action council and not just like program specific, but you might have some program specific ones, but.
Well, we haven't done any program specific ones, I know, it's just as an agency in general. I know there's been some regarding just sort of implicit bias, but I can kind of get some more information on that.
Okay, thanks. And then for our next presentation, you have the Project Independence Rapid Rehousing Program through the Continuum of Care.
Okay, yeah, so Project Independence, or we call it PI, is a rapid rehousing program. We don't have a specific target population, so we can serve pretty much anyone. We can serve single individuals, couples, households with children. There's not a specific target population. And as far as what we strive to do, we do just try to focus on the performance measures and moving clients to housing as much as possible and helping them maintain that housing. As far as the person served, our actual versus target, the households we were about on target at 18 out of 20, but with the person served, our households were a bit smaller than anticipated. So we served a lot more singles and couples than we did the households with children. The target number is sort of factoring in the hope that we may have serve some families, but we didn't serve as many during the reporting during this last program year. As far as the breakdowns goes, a few more males than females. That number was a little more, I guess there was a little more dramatic with the children. The race, we did serve more whites than any other race, and we did have the breakdown of non-Hispanic to Hispanic was 26 or 11. As far as performance measures go, we had an average of 82 days from project entry to move-in date. Out of those that had exited the program, 81% did so with permanent housing. We haven't had any returns to homelessness. Income is always a struggle, so as far as stayers, there weren't any change in income as far as obtaining income or increasing income. We did have some at exit, and that's not to say they didn't have income, it just meant that whatever income they had was not, gained. They gain income or increase it, or the majority didn't gain or increase that, so that's good. We did submit our APR on time. We out of the program. We don't have any unresolved monitorings. We are being monitored next week with that program as well, so fingers crossed it doesn't change. We have no funds quarterly. We did have some funds that were recaptured. And again, we don't serve a specific subpopulation, and we are housing first. We do hold weekly staff meetings with case managers where we discuss their caseload, any challenges that may happen that may be seen in progress with their clients for either moving into housing or toward exit from the program because they're able to maintain on their own. And as far as the diversity and equity, it's sort of the same. So kind of the same questions. Hopefully I'll have an update to that next time.
Okay, we can open up for questions for this program.
I was just going to ask, I saw that the length between enrollment and move-in was actually longer, significantly longer for this program than for Crisis Youth. And I honestly would have expected more challenges in identifying housing for youth. So could you speak to if you have been able to identify any of the particular challenges for this project?
Yeah, I think there was probably a couple that would have affected that. One, we had, within the program funding year, we had some turnover of staff, so we were shortened staff, but also had new staff that were new to housing. So I think there's always an adjustment in terms of coming into housing and kind of finding your groove with that. I also think there were a couple outliers that it took really a long time to get them housed. There were a couple of referrals that it wasn't, I think there were maybe one that was more of a background and one where they were just they're very selective about where they wanted to be, so. So analysis on that, but I think those were probably the two biggest factors in terms of.
When it comes to the outliers, I would just encourage you to double check those and make sure the data is polling accurately in the report and there's not anything that might be entered incorrectly skewing the measure, because obviously as we move into the next competition, that would be a measure we're all going to be evaluated.
Other questions?
Yeah, Marty, I think you said you typically, or the number of households served, was more closer to the target, but the number of people served less because there was more families served, is that right?
Less families served.
Oh,
So
less.
We had more individuals, so the household size was, the number of households was about the target, but the size of those households was smaller.
Okay, I was just wondering if you knew like the reason or had any ideas of why that was.
I mean, some of it's just, with the referrals that come through coordinated entry and those stuff we request families. I think there's also been some housing resources available through the emergency housing vouchers that focused on families. So I think that sort of reduced the number of families that would be referred to.
Yeah, I'd agree. Our coordinated entry system tends to carry fewer people on our family list than on individuals, and there has been some resources, like with the emergency housing vouchers, our top priority was families with children.
Oh, okay, so that makes sense.
Because that voucher does not carry a minimum rent. It's good for, I believe, 10 years. We also, due to pairing it with some funding through CDBG-CV, through grants and special programs, LHA was also able to do some furniture assistance and some other things to really set those households up pretty well for success.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have one. For the, and this is kind of relates to the last one too, for the income earned, the targets versus the outcomes, what, I would presume that it's always going to be hard to increase income while someone is in a program. I'm just going to start with that basic assumption. So then I'm looking here about the targets relative to the outcome, and is this an instance where maybe the target percentages should be lowered to match the realities, or do you think the targets that are set are fair, but there's increased barriers or something, and that's why the outcomes are lower?
I'd say the targets are probably pretty high, they're probably ambitious. But it also, I mean, there's factors that kind of tie into that too. So if someone comes in with, fixed income, like they're receiving an award or something, they get a slight increase each year, but they may not, that may not be captured necessarily as an increase, even though they may have income. I mean, I can't speak to everybody. I know in some of our programs we've had higher success, a couple, but usually those are sort of outliers. So I mean, as far as my experience goes, I think some of those targets may be a little ambitious just based on my experience, but I don't know how those targets compare to like the COC overall. So it could be something that we need to look at internally if we're sort of outliers from what the city has in population as far as how we're working with families to help or individuals to help engage.
I can say that Marissa and I actually walked those measures back a little bit. In last year's COC competition, they were even higher previously, as far as our local benchmarks go. So we're definitely open to discussion around that. My only hesitation around decreasing them further would just be that this is one of the areas that we consistently struggle on the HUD system performance measures. And so I think this is an instance of, even if it's ambitious, I think having a higher target might motivate us and help us get closer to where we need to be for the system.
Yeah.
And it is income growth, not necessarily like sustained income.
And that's one of the
That's-
primary things that brings it down.
Yeah, and that seems to be something that Marty was talking about too, about how there are people who have income there, but this is that measure of increase, not whether they had it to start with or not.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And before we move on from Community Action Council, Marty, I was just going to let you know, I think there is a typo for crisis housing and support for youth for the number of households. I just ran a report and it gave me 14 households. It was 13 adult-only households and 1 household with children, but the number of persons was 16. And it looks like, am I correct that there were no individuals served in transitional housing for that year?
That's right. We didn't have anybody served in transitional housing, so that's one of the reasons we're looking, just because, again, when we originally did the application with Arbor, there wasn't a shelter for 18 to 24 youth, and so I think they typically access the shelter versus the transitional housing.
They've communicated to us that they've been consistently running that shelter at capacity and often have to turn youth away to other congregate shelters. So you might just want to revisit that conversation with them and see if maybe there's just a disconnect where there's some individuals who could benefit that just aren't necessarily being connected to the program.
Right, and it could be, it's also a little different because it does require, even with transitional housing, it requires a role as coordinating someone into.
Yeah, they have to be referred to the program and they can choose what component they want to go into.
And then just so I'm looking at this right, so the prior program we were talking about, that's the household number that needs to be served, or the one we're looking at now?
The prior one,
the crisis for youth?
Yeah, that
So
6 should actually be a 14.
14. Okay, so then that's over the targeted 12. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Marty. Okay, on our agenda, our next item is Greenhouse 17 for the emergency shelter, and this is an extended social resource program. Great. Take it away.
So I'm Diane, Greenhouse 17. Alyssa might join in if I say something completely just off the wall. She'll be my truth teller. So just a brief overview. We are a 42-bed shelter program for folks experiencing intimate partner violence and their dependents. Independence can be any age, actually. It's not 18 and under. So if you're living with mom is a dependent on you, and so therefore grandmother, victim of domestic violence, and children need to come in, then we can accommodate that. It's not something we have tons of space for, but I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. We do serve the 17-county Central Kentucky region, but I would say over the past 17 years, most of our folks do come from Fayette County, and I would say that's sort of a span of anywhere from 50 to 70% does come from Fayette County. The criteria to get in is that somebody is experiencing intimate partner violence, that they really have no other place to go, and the severity of the abuse and potential abuse happening if they don't get to safe space is really what we're looking for. We are in a network of other programs within our coalition, so if we don't have space, we will ask if they want us to call other programs and then bring them back to our space if that's possible. A lot of folks don't want to leave the area because kids might be in school, they might be working, their support system is here, and then we would look at homeless shelters that are nearby, so whether that's Salvation Army or whether that's the Beacon of Hope in Clark County or Jessamine County, and then again connect them to our outreach services, and then when we have space, then we would bring them in, and that's usually about a week or two. Sometimes safety-wise, that's an okay thing. It gets them a little bit out of Dodge, and then things can sort of settle down. We can get protective orders and then bring back. I do think we're making more referrals to homeless shelters, and I'm kind of looking at you right now just because I think that's valid. I think it's one of our concerns. We like people to get into the domestic violence programs, but a lot of people are really wanting to stay situated in their home space. So that is happening. Our program, for folks that don't know, is kind of a phased programming. So when they first come in, it's really just getting them settled and acclimated to community living, because that in itself is a hardship when you're already in crisis and stress, to then come into a house full of men, women, and children. And I wanted to say that too. We do serve men. Our priority, or not a priority, our primary folks certainly are women, individual women or women with children. But we usually, I think it's unusual for us to not have a male in shelter right now. That seems to be on the uptick. So we just kind of like to get them situated and get documents ready, so I hear that a lot in this area. We sort of use a similar thing. So let's get birth certificates, let's get people signed up on things, let's get food stamps, let's get that sort of situated. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, are you wanting to stay here? Is this working? Do you feel safe here? Or have we found alternative things? And if they want to stay and it makes sense and they want to continue doing domestic violence programming, groups and individual work, then we move them into what we call as the healing phase, where they do a self-identified goal plan as to what their accomplishments are. And then depending on if housing is an issue or going back to school or saving money through a job or whatever that is, when they have somewhat identified what they think their exit date is, when they're about a month out, we move them into what we call as a launching phase, which we then try to connect with outreach services, community services, our outreach workers, take them to go look for apartments, tell them this is where your kids are going to be going to school, just to kind of do a bit of a soft handoff in that. We also, I think, are somewhat known for the farm, so around all of traditional kind of domestic violence work that we do utilize a lot of nature-based work, because we think there's a lot of evidence to that, of how that supports people experiencing trauma. People can work on the farm if they want to, but we're really trying to expand that also just to do programming outdoors and in nature, both for kids and moms. And I'm going to go through a quick little flowery PowerPoint if I can get it on. Not that it matters much, but I just wanted to highlight really more one thing. But you have to look at pretty pictures too.
Is it pulling up on your computer?
No. Here's me and my dad, in case you need to see that. Okay. So we can't get the whole thing. Oh, it is on my computer now. Is it going to do that? She's amazing. Okay. So we can't get the whole PowerPoint, but you're looking at the screen. So that's Greenhouse 17. These are just some of the families that are there. Our space that's there. Probably one of the most difficult things in shelter is parenting pieces, of everybody parents the right way and everybody else parents the wrong way. So kind of a lot of supportive work around that is important. This is Teresa and her puppy, which kind of hold on to that thought. Littles. Kids go to school right at shelter, so they just go over to Deep Springs or Bryan Station Mill or Bryan Station High. They can work with McKinney-Vento if they want to go back to their home school, but it's kind of nice for all the kids to go to the same school, catch the bus at the same time. It's a lot easier process. If they do the McKinney-Vento, they're getting up at, I don't think I'm exaggerating, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It's crazy pants. So if I had a senior in high school that was on the cheerleader team and had to stay there, then that would make sense, but otherwise not. That's Kristen. Being welcoming. We have a little sewing room, we have an art room. We also know people in trauma doing a lot of hand work, focus, kind of staying out of headspace can be really helpful. This is our farm space. We do have 3 horses. They're Lindsay's, who is a practicum student with us. We just pet them, we feed them carrots, and we look at them, but they're super cute. Our insurance people refuse to let us to do equine therapy, so that is sad. We do try to incorporate a lot of healthy living. We have a woman right now, Finley, who's in the kitchen, and she's done a lot of work with mindful eating and how that impacts brain and body. So we're sending her to a lot of training, and so she's beginning to incorporate a lot of farm to table meals. We've always done that, but I think she's much more intentional on how we approach food and how we approach our body, particularly women, I think hold a lot of trauma and guilt spaces in that. That was Finley. It's on our farm. Okay, these are our most current residents. This is why I wanted to share this with you all. So one of the things that I keep hearing being part of this group is kind of low barrier. And I will tell you, I don't know if it's true, but since COVID, I think everybody bought an animal. I think everybody in the world has an animal. And so I don't know if you're experiencing this in your homeless shelters, and I know that's a kind of a hard no usually for folks. We've always done it a teeny bit with hopes of having a foster families. That's a hard one, kind of, isn't it, to do? We have a great partnership with Animal Care Control, but they can't manage everything. They do all of our spay and neuter free. They do vaccinations for free. We've got a little feral cat world. They come and do spay neuter for, they're amazing. But we were finding a lot of folks were getting on the web and just saying this animal is a support animal. They get all the certificate. And we were in a constant space of, I don't really think this iguana is your support animal. I don't really think so. So with a little bit of, I don't know, we've just sort of taken a plunge, and I don't know that we're 100% in agreement, but we've just sort of stopped that whole asking of the question. If this is a family pet, this pet is dear to you, you have had this pet, and this pet has no place else safe to go, or staying at home with an abusive person could be dangerous for the animal, which we know is a high indicator of domestic violence is abuse to animals, bring them. So this is our current population of people right now. So we've got 2 bunnies. Do you know their names? I don't know their names.
Disney princesses.
What is it?
It's 2 Disney princesses.
Okay, those are friends. This little guy is always outside my door, so he is there all the time. We also have a hamster. And then we have 2 monster dogs. That they're only monsters because they're little and they're yippy yappy. And then we have another, I think everybody has a bully dog. So everybody has the pit bull mixed dog, which I have to say sort of panics us a little bit. So we have a lot of kind of, Greenhouse 17 prides itself in no rules, but we kind of try to have a lot of structure around pets always have to be leashed. This is where they can be walked. They have to be out front. Really be thoughtful about the pets with their stress, because there's 20 other children and that could be. So I don't want a little bully dog biting at a little kid because they're just sort of panicky. So we have a lot of conversation around that. And we've just sort of gone full throttle as far as buying things. So we went and bought kitty litter, we bought, cat food, we bought chew toys, we bought cleaning stuff, because otherwise we were always sort of responding to it after the fact. We did a beautiful renovation about, 5 years ago, and so Darlene is very thoughtful, our executive director, very thoughtful of not damaging the space. It's still a little bit of a battle, but we're just trying to be preventative. But I just didn't want pets to be the issue that people aren't coming to shelter. I'm an animal person, Alyssa is an animal person. I'm probably not coming to shelter if my animal can't come with me, or I don't have another plan. So anyways, these are our latest. This next picture is not a sexy picture, and it's not about a pet at all. But I did want you to know, because another thing, I did want you to know, another thing that I hear a lot is access for people with mobility issues or disability issues. So this is not the picture I wanted, but let's see. I just want you to know, in our renovation, we took actually 2 bathrooms. We took the tub out and we have just walk-in showers, but we do have the showers also for folks so that people, they need to come in and need to be seated. Our whole shelter is on one floor, so there's no steps to get into shelter. It's all kind of one level, except the basement, but there's really no reason for folks to get to the basement. So we're very mobility friendly, when you say, and compared to even our domestic violence shelters across the state. If you were to go to Moorhead Shelter, I think you have to climb a mountain. I know it's often an issue when you go to Salvation Army. They can only handle so many. We do not have any bunk beds, so it's not like here's the beds, but oh, I only have bunk beds available. We bump into that with Beacon of Hope, I think, or maybe it's Jessamine County Shelter. It's like, well, we have one space, but you got to be bunk bed available. So we don't have any of that, which I think is really important as we talk about low barrier kind of work. I'm going back to Pretty now.
Hey, Diane.
Yeah.
We do like a 10-minute-ish presentation time, and you're right at that. So
Yes.
you want to like
That's
wrap
done.
up
I'm
quick?
done. I'm done. That was the last. I just wanted you all to see our current population of animals, because I just think it's really important. So that's kind of Greenhouse 17 shelter. That's sort of the picture pieces. As far as the data, you'll see, and I think we're a little bit on track. We've had 312 men, women, and children be in shelter. We kind of, 92% of them have had their case management. Our average length of stay is 61 days. I always think that's a little, I don't know what I want to say. It's misleading, perhaps, because I think we have a chunk of folks that might stay for a week or less. But folks that get past, would you say, Alyssa, probably that first week to 2 weeks, they stay probably 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So that median mode thing is a little skewed. Once they decide to stay, they're usually there for a period of time. We try to hold it at 6 months. I kind of see that emotionally they start stepping backwards a little bit after 6 months in community living. So we kind of nudge that to happen. We've been blessed with a lot of housing, so usually that's an issue. When I first started this work, people could wait 2 years before they would get housing. That is no longer true. Most of our folks can figure a place to go. Returning to homeless, 25 adults, percentage of households removed for rule violations. We are big proponents of, we're really no rule facility. We have a lot of guidelines. I looked at those 11 folks. It was sort of split evenly in thirds. Substance use to the point that it was causing some concern with other residents, like leaving drugs around, maybe dealing at the shelter, so some severe substance use things going on. Maybe threats to others was probably the other third, so pretty egregious threats to other residents and staff would be the other. And then mental health would be the other one, and again, just to the point that you're not able to participate in program because your mental health has not been, we're not working with anybody, we're not at a place to work with anybody. So those are areas that I think is a real struggle for Greenhouse 17 because we don't turn people out easily. Number of homeless adults and their children that receive healthy meals, that's 100%. Let's see, anything else that's really interesting? Healing plan, again, if they stay within that first week or two, that's really about 100%, but 90% of folks don't stay very long. With our housing program, I think this is even beefed up, that a lot of people really start working on their financial and their budgeting, along within that initial phase of getting people signed up for their documents happens pretty quick, and that is true with their self-sufficiency goals. Good?
We'll open up for questions. Okay, no questions for you today.
Excellent. I like that.
You got a lot.
Yes, Jeff
We don't
has
have
one.
any
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
there has been a lot of discussion around pets, and so I was just wondering, do you all have any lessons learned so far that you would share with the group in terms of if other shelters were looking to try to implement similar policies? Is there things that you guys have learned? Oh, we can't do this. This is something that's been really helpful. Just wondering if there's anything, and I know you're still early.
We're still kind of playing with, but I would say, and honestly, please jump in if you want to, what I would say is have some pretty strong conversations with folks about, we definitely want to make sure that they have seen by a vet, and you've got a partner, you've got a veterinarian partner, so that their vaccinations are current, and really encourage the spay-neuter. Alyssa would probably say they ought to be spay-neutered. I'm a little softer on that, but pretty spay-neuter. The other thing is just to sort of get an idea of temperament. Can they handle it okay in community living? I really try not to do any interactions with the animal and other people till we've seen the animal for a couple of weeks, just to know, like, let's just not even risk it. And I sort of put it in the benefit of it's your job to protect your animal. So while it's stressed and while it's, whatever, let's just not have a lot of interaction with the kids, because they all want to come in, they all want to pet, they all want to, pull its tail, they all want to do that. So we have sort of separate spaces for that. So just really intense conversations. And the other is just know it's not going to be perfect. I think we tried to think that it was going to be perfect and just be proactive. So we got a lot of, just recently, chew toys, and we were ready. And we also have them sign a babysitting log, so if they leave the shelter, who's taking care of the dog if you don't come back? Is there someone because they might go, I'm just going for an hour. Well, it's 4 hours later, and little one needs to go out. So who's doing that? So having someone in the shelter or a staff person that's willing to take that on if they leave the property, I think is really important. But those are kind of my big ones, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I have actually one question. In the last section of the ongoing evaluation and improvement, you mentioned the virtual support group trainings that you're doing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
As horrible as COVID was, I think it was the one thing that we'd wanted to do for a long time, but we were really afraid of confidentiality. We were really concerned that people didn't have internet access, and I think we were falling to grease to some old models. Pretty much everyone now does have a smartphone or access to internet capability, and I think there's the same confidentiality issues with in-person support group, well, not the same, but a different set of issues. And this took away the idea of having to take care of childcare. It took care of the issue of transportation. It also took care of, I'm in Fayette County, so these are the support groups I can do, but really I might like Stephanie Love's group that she does in Madison County, so I can go to hers too, and I can dip into anyone that I want. So I could go to 5 support groups and not just the one that's being hosted in my community. So we do vet that. We have an online kind of portal, I guess, that if someone's interested in a Zoom support group, that goes out to and they go, I'm interested in these 3. That outreach advocate will reach out to them and give them access, so we kind of know who's coming to the Zoom support group. We've had a few times where someone has had a group going or has been participating in their home, an abusive partner has been in the background. So we've had conversations around that, around their safety and the safety of the other folks. There's also some debate about whether you should always be screen on or whether you need to be screen off, so we kind of know who's there but also can protect anonymity. So that seems to be a running dialogue. But I think the support group option on Zoom or virtual is just opened us wide open. I think it was ampersand in the past, but I'm not 100% sure. They had folks that were participating out of state to their support groups. It just opens up your population. So I think it's a good thing.
And so this is just one set of the groups that you're offering, so do you still have in-person ones as well?
In-house we have, and then in Lexington we have a Tuesday night support group that is in person. We have another one that's in Frankfurt, but I will say most of them are Zoom, or outreach ones, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Becky? Okay. And then our final presentation today is from Vista. So we have Christina here. No, sorry.
Close.
Sorry.
Both new.
Permanent supportive housing from the continuum of care program.
I mean, if you want to. Our PSH program operates pretty similarly to any others, and we have the most creative name in the world, which is Continuing of Care Program. Whoever named that, good move. Really the only thing that I'd say, one of the things I'd say sets us apart a little bit is the access to the employment specialist. While they are not paid for by the grant, so they're not like a paid member of the team, they do interact with the team and offer that supportive service to anybody referred to the program. We've seen some benefit in income increase from that, but it's not been as significant this year as I would like. Some years it's more, some years it's less. The number of clients that we served this year was 23 total people, so adults and children. Our target's 15. When it comes to households, 15 is the target, 17 was the actual this year. So that's pretty good, going over, I'm fine with that. When it comes to demographics, of the 23 total served, 61% were white, or identified as white, and 39% identified as black. We had no other races selected by anyone. When it comes to ethnicity, that was 4% identified as Hispanic, Latino, X, or non-Hispanic was 96%. So that was pretty close actually to the data from the Lex count for households without children. I picked that one because it was the largest data set. 25% of the folks in that group identified as Black/African American, so we were a little overrepresented there compared to those currently experiencing homelessness. And 69.5% identified as white, so slightly underrepresented there. 6% identified as Hispanic, so that's close to 4. Not great, but it's close, and I think we all know that, there's some stuff there. When it comes to gender identity, everybody identified as cisgender, and I did get some data from the Lex count for that group, and it was 0.4%, so not significantly different there. For those that did not identify as cisgender, I should clarify. When it comes to performance measures, the length of stay, I actually had to end up manually calculating because it wasn't pulling well in the ADR, so I'm going to have to fix that. See what the issue is, but when I manually calculated it, I just did the mean, and it was 52 days from entry to house. I think we'll see a significant change next year due to some outliers, but for this time period, that should be about right. Exit to positive destination was 100%. Returns to homelessness, though, were 6% of households served. So not ideal. That's a little bit over the target. And there's really nothing to do about that now. Job and income growth. We did not exceed for the new or increased, but we did exceed it for the non-employment income, which did increase enough to exceed the target. APR submission was due yet, to my memory. I think that's 4:30 is what I wrote there. HUD monitoring is actually happening next week for us too, so we're in good company with Marty, so that'll be fun. Funds recapture, I put no, but actually as we were sitting here, I think maybe it might have been about $2,000. I'm misremembering. If that's correct, I'll send a correction. All subpopulations served, housing first approach, and then self-projected outcomes. So nothing too major there. As a note, as it was mentioned for DEI, Vista has a DEI 4, and we do have mandatory training surrounding that. We had a cultural competency run late last year, and we're searching for some new ones too. We did some ones around working with veterans as well. So when it comes to the improvement plans, I was pretty light here. but I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. When it comes to what we really want to see happen, we want to improve our data quality, which pretty much always every year we want to keep doing that, right? But the landlord networking, housing list, and exploration of improved techniques for avoiding eviction / lease termination / non-renewal, that's something that is going to take a little bit more of a concerted effort, and that's been, I think, the largest issue our program has experienced in the past year is more than any other year I've been here. We've seen a lot more people not getting their leases renewed, or who are being, I wouldn't say a lot more being evicted, but we have to avoid eviction by figuring out a way to get them to exit the household. And that has been a challenge. It's something that I know Jeff has seen come up with data. It's something that we don't like being the reality. But the things that we have in our repertoire have not been successful at stopping it from happening entirely. And we've been able to do a couple of pretty creative things to keep some folks in longer than they would have otherwise. But I do think that for us, that's something that I myself would like to explore some new techniques or tools to kind of improve that, because that's an issue that we have. Now, how are we going to actually do these things? Because I didn't mention that at all. So more regular budgetary monitoring as part of bi-weekly team meetings to improve spend down. That's going to be a big one because, as mentioned, because of all the people that had times in the housing surge, our spend this year wasn't as good as last year's. And we're going to need to improve that to be able to continue to meet that need. So how I'm going to do that is, again, we do a regular bi-weekly team meeting anyway. I'll just actually review the budget during that instead of quarterly. I think that's probably a better way to do that. Continued improvement of our housing list and more coordinated effort for landlord engagement. We actually have somebody who does housing coordination at the drop-in center for the ACT team and for the supported apartment program. So I'm thinking we may just move in with her and begin a kind of more organized effort there. That's probably going to help us some. We recently updated the housing list, and it's not completely finalized, but it's almost there. Once it is, I'll send it to you guys. If you like it, you can send it out. But that's something that we're also going to be consistently doing, because before it just kind of happened as we noticed it became useless, and that's not ideal. So additionally,
I'll operate.
I normally do, so I gotta fix that. Additionally, as I mentioned, I want to explore more staff training opportunities around maintaining units through that crisis, because that's been the hardest thing besides the non-renewals. It's very difficult to predict if the landlord's just going to decide to not renew if they don't communicate that until it's coming. But when it comes to those in crisis, having that relationship with a landlord to where they'll give us more wiggle room than they might a typical tenant, I think we can get there. We just need to come up with something to do it. And I'm not yet there. If I had that tool, we would have already done it. So that's something that I need to work to identify. Let's see here. Oh, and then the last thing, renewed emphasis on engagement with our employment specialist, because while we do offer that service, not everybody takes advantage of that. In fact, engagement with that employment specialist is at roughly, it's like maybe 20% of the households will even work with her, and of those ones, we haven't had great success yet with most of them. And there's a myriad of reasons, but fundamentally, I think that the issue is, while they get that pressure, not necessarily pressure, but reminder, sorry, pressure is the wrong word, reminder from the case manager that this is a thing that exists and we really should work on becoming financially independent, whether that be through something like SSI, SSDI, or employment. I think having the employment specialist go with the case manager and the peer to meet with them on a quarterly basis will help that engagement some. Because even if they still don't want it, they're seeing the face, they're getting to know this person, and I think that could help lead to better outcomes. So that's what we're going to do to try and fix the issues we've identified. I know that was a bit long. Any questions?
You're like right at time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I got the questions.
I'm just curious, as far as the non-renewals, are you seeing that more as issues with the tenant, as far as behavioral actions, or is it more so the choice of the landlord, perhaps they're renovating or other issues that perhaps?
Most of them were due to renovations. There were a few that were due to, this was where some of the downsides of housing more than one person at one property can come into play. Unfortunately, one tenant ended up leaving a bad enough taste in the mouth of the landlord that they non-renewed the others who didn't do anything. And despite making the case that there have been no issues with these tenants, we've always paid on time, so why are they being treated differently? That didn't ultimately change their mind, and they chose not to renew. We managed to get them to do month to month for several months, but that was actually only even available due to being able to utilize a different pot of money to pay for some of the damages caused by the other tenant. So that wouldn't have even been available to us had we not been able to do that. So that was the creative part I mentioned earlier. It helped us. We managed to be able to rehouse the ones that had lost it due to that. But we're still in the housing search actually for the ones that had caused that particular issue. So we're not going to.
This might be the household we were communicating about.
It is, yeah. You're correct on that. Yes.
I had some questions about the non-renewal too, so I'll ask the follow-up. For the ones that you're seeing being renovated, do you have any sense of, are those coming back renovated in a way that you can still use them for your programs, or are they coming back at like higher rates and?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really what I've seen from the ones that I've followed up with after the fact, is that the rate went up to the point it's not really tenable for our groups anymore. We all know that that's a common issue here.
Yeah, I can add from the system perspective that non-renewal of lease has been something that we've struggled with since 2021 with the initial version of housing stabilization. That's where we had tried to introduce a statement that the landlord had to sign to try to protect individuals from being evicted, but then quickly landlords found the loophole of, well, I'm not evicting them, I'm just not renewing their lease so I can get paid and also get rid of this tenant. And then I think as we got further into the pandemic, a lot of it became more so issues of, I now receive 200 applications. When I have a vacancy, I can charge more money if I get this tenant to leave us.
And that's what I think we're seeing is that the fundamental issue is the need for that, or the possibility of increased income for the landlord, I think is really what's driving that, not renewal.
What I'm curious to see is at what point do we kind of reach the ceiling where there's no longer going to be an ability to keep increasing the rent and get that level of demand?
I wonder when we'll see it myself.
I'm kind of surprised at some of the rates I'm seeing.
It's shocking, really.
Like I've been with a mortgage for a while now and not renting, but when I actually hear it's been so far removed from my renting days, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I understand. I still rent, and when I saw the increase this year, I was like, well, better look at other units. Did and went, nope, I'll just remain. And, that's just one of those things that I personally, and my staff have also reported, we're seeing just a huge decrease in the amount of actually available, truly like within the FMR rates units. It's dramatically changing. Our landscape is changing, and it's happening faster
then the FMRs change.
Yes, I will second that.
And I do wish that would be like reflected more in, like when we're talking about like vacancy rates, like that's never differentiated. So like we see the vacancy rate being like whatever percent it is, but like, yes, that vacancy rate is almost non-existent, like the FMR, like below, it just isn't. And you have to luck into something being open, or like wait for somebody to like die or get arrested or whatever, you know, and that never really gets reflected. And so sometimes I think people see that it's like, well, you know, you have 5% or 6% or whatever it is, you should be able to find something, but like,
it's very
not when it's
now
like
that
$2,500.
That the way for someone to move into a unit is, well, there's an eviction process.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that has been a thing.
It used to be back, you know, a couple of years ago, it was more so as well, we're waiting for a couple more repairs to be done.
Yeah.
I miss those days.
I was gonna ask, I know at one point the program was significantly over-enrolled and the agency was attempting to reduce down. I see the numbers are still a little bit above target. Do you think you have them at like a sustainable level? Does the fact that so many people have been in a housing search process play into that, where you may have to reduce further once everyone's actually housed?
So when we look at the actual money we have available due to incomes within the program, we should be fine even if we house everybody and they stay housed for the whole year at the payment that we're making. It shouldn't be an issue of having to exit anyone from a program for fiscal reasons. We can't grow it though, beyond that number if everyone were housed. And so that's why we've been kind of stationary at that 17 households number. Because we did have periods where I considered going above it to get better spend down, but the reality was that rehousing was such a difficult thing for the folks that we already had that it didn't seem wise to add more to that, because it's not like we would know, you know, is this person who's going to be relatively easy to house or not, and I'm not going to turn somebody away once they're in the program. So it was the best to most prudent decision, I think, to stick with that number. But we will be fine at 17 even once everybody is rehoused. At this point, most of them are, but as you know, there's not everybody yet. And that will be fine at this number.
Other questions?
Is there a waiting list, or how does that work? Like, so you're with it's 17 units or 17 households, but is there like or does it like turn over or people exit and more people come on?
So as people exit, I do request a new referral through coordinated entry. But that's really about the only way we get, that is the only way we get new referrals. So it's not necessarily a wait list system. It just goes through the coordinated entry system as typical.
And then I had one question on your, we were talking before about employment income and increases, and you have, you're lower than the targets on the employment income, but you're higher than the targets on the non-employment income. So I was just wondering what you might think of as like best practices for that, for the non-employment income, or like what is really working there?
Well, what's working there was that they increased the amount of money that they got. That's really all. We just have enough people in the program that have that. I mean, yes, we utilize SOAR. We have used SOAR with some of the folks that are there. But really just those that are eligible for Social Security or disability, getting that application in is really the only thing we've seen be a big difference there. And when it comes to the increased, it should be noted that that is increased. When it comes to this year, I don't believe we had a new person receive Social Security. So I didn't separate them out because I didn't see that was how it was tallied. But if it were to be separated out, from memory, it would be 40% increased stayers, 50% increased leavers, not 40% new, 50% new. But yeah, we've had good success with our Social Security applications. Our staff are SOAR certified, so they know how to do it, even if, for whatever reason, a person doesn't want to go through the SOAR process. They're a very good advocate along the way. And I'd say that would be a good best practice to have, but it's already pretty heavily encouraged in the system.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. And that is our last presentation for today. I'll open up for any other public comments or announcements that anyone else from the group has. Seeing none. Our next meeting is June 21st at 1:30, and that will be here. On the schedule for that meeting, we have Community Action Council for the Street Outreach Program, LFUCG for COC Planning Grant, Salvation Army for the Emergency Shelter, and Welcome House for the PAYE program. So looking forward to those presentations. And if no one else has anything, I can take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
And
I will
second,
second it, yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.